Alrighty, we've dumped on 650s, dumped on cruisers and scramblers. What other bikes can I go to town on? Well, there are those beginner bikes out there, and there's a whole bunch of problems with those bikes. I'm sure this won't upset anybody, so let's give it a shot. But there's so many different kinds of beginner bikes out there nowadays, so I need to be a little bit more specific. Today, I'm going to break down the 7 reasons why the 300cc class of beginner bikes suck. Obviously, the 125s suck, and UA1 bros know exactly what I'm talking about. And since a 125 is basically useless in America, you don't even need to bother. Now, I know poking fun at 300s might be easy, and it's not exactly going to be fun for a noob to hear, but there are some serious flaws in that segment that make them basically the worst thing on 2 wheels you can buy with your hard-earned cash other than a Harley Dyna. Man, is it just me, or can you also hear all the keyboards tapping away? That was a joke, Dyna bros. Relax. It's okay. Your motorcycle's fine, even though it was made in 1850 and updated in 1987, but back to the 300s. I want to make a quick disclaimer here and say that if you want to start on a 300, you're making the correct decision and I'm behind it 100%. Just know that that motorcycle's probably not going to be your forever bike unless you're some kind of small bike fetishist who wants to own a whole bunch of little bikes because they're basically indestructible and cost nothing to maintain. Kind of like a Rokform case now that I think about it. I legitimately ordered a phone case from them this morning and it was dirt cheap compared to the oversized OtterBox I currently have my phone in. When they were testing the cases, I heard they quite literally strapped a phone to a Hayabusa and then slammed it nose first into a cement wall. And while the wall disintegrated into powder, both the phone and the Hayabusa were unscathed. Now, that may not have actually happened, but the case is drop tested from 6 feet, features a phone-safe magnet, and pops right onto their handlebar-mounted base to hold your phone nice and tight to your bike. It's also a lot smaller than those other claw mounts, and there's none of those rubber fingers that push your volume buttons up and down while you're listening to your music. Be like me. Make the correct decision. Buy a Rokform mount by clicking the link down below and using the code YN25 to get 25% off your order and free shipping. Now that's enough preamble. Let's get our beating sticks out and start wailing on the 300s. Number 7 on today's list is build quality. Now, admittedly, this one has been improving slightly over the past few years, but 300cc motorcycles are basically all plastic and held together with gaffer's tape and zip ties. Let's take the CBR 300R for example, a bike from Honda, which is a company that is synonymous with high build quality and a price that reflects it, read more expensive than the competition. Now, from 10 feet away, or in pictures on the internet, you look at it and it looks like a pretty sweet bike, but when you get up close, you can really see where the corners have been cut, especially when you're looking at the dashboard. You get injection molded plastic that doesn't quite sit right, with a dash that looks like it came off of one of those little electric cars a kid may drive around the yard in. The exhaust can is just a silver tube, and the whole bike feels unsubstantial and cheap. I understand this motorcycle's made for a beginner to drop and beat up, but you still want to own a motorcycle with that look back factor. It's not just the looks though. These bikes pack some serious bargain bin parts when it comes to the brakes, levers, and hoses. The R3 has an atrociously bad lever feel, and it needs a simple fluid and pad swap to drastically improve the feel, yet since 2015, Yamaha's just sat around with their thumb up their butts making the bike look pretty, but not making such a simple change to a critical component. Which leads me into number 6. Every single 300cc motorcycle is basically the same. Sure, you might get a single in one and one may have a parallel twin, but they're all the same glorified scooter whether you get the Ninja 300 or Suzuki GSX 250R, which obviously you shouldn't get a GSX 250R. That bike's basically been evolving backwards. There's just no innovation coming from this segment, or at least there isn't from the big 4. Mercifully, KTM made the Duke 390, which has all sorts of cool stuff in it, but the big 4 have been completely content to sit on their laurels and rake in money from the same motorcycles year over year. Let's take the R3 for example. In 2019, Yamaha announced an all-new R3 with bodywork reminiscent of the bigger bikes, upside-down forks, a new dash, and oh wait, the same exact 321cc parallel twin. I mean, could you imagine a world where Yamaha made an R3 with a 270-degree crank like the MT-07? Just changing the firing order a little will give the bike so much more personality and pizzazz, but nope, it's just got that same old lawnmower motor. I mean, it's even got the same old floppy turn signals. Now, I'm not saying that I want fully adjustable suspension or I want TFT dashes or that I need rider modes or any of that stuff, even though KTM and Husqvarna have all figured that out. But give me something to make these bikes just a little bit more exciting. Factory LEDs, adjustable levers, or something that makes me feel like I'm not sitting on top of baby's first motorcycle. Number 5 is that there's no cool technology on Big 4 300s. I touched on it briefly a second ago, but I really want to expand on it here. Like I mentioned earlier, with the Duke 390 you get a TFT dash and supermoto mode that switches off the rear wheel ABS, but you also get a slipper clutch, ride-by-wire, WP suspension. Hell, even the 390 offers traction control, cornering ABS, and an optional bi-directional quick shifter. And the R3 offers ABS. Yup, big old bubkiss in the tech department. It's a crying shame too, because as sort of an experienced rider, I'm absolutely floored by what you can cram into these little bikes. And as a newbie, it does give you some bragging rights, even if the traction control is sort of pointless on your 300. Now, do you need all of these cool features to be able to learn how to ride a motorcycle? No. Obviously not. People have been getting by just fine without them forever, and honestly, it can be a little overwhelming and distracting to a new rider to have to cycle through menus when they really just need to be focused on learning the basics. However, I do think that a lot of people would be less inclined to jump off their 300 after a couple of months and get a bigger, fancier bike if the bike they already owned was actually cool. Again, just to reiterate, I had a lot more fun with our giveaway Duke 390 than I ever did with our R1, and I'm genuinely impressed with the Duke's features. Now, number 4 is going to be very subjective here, seeing as I'm a gigantic American man who's eaten a few too many cheeseburgers in my time, but 300cc motorcycles are physically too small for some riders. I'm 6'3", and in the before times I was 230 pounds in my gear, and the MT-03 was objectively too small. Now, one quarantine and countless frozen pizzas later, I can say the MT-03 is still way too small for a guy my size. Even Papa Yams at 5'11" or 6'1", depending on how many cups of coffee he's had, has said that he's at the upper limit of what that motorcycle can handle. Again, I get these motorcycles are meant for beginners who are likely younger and still growing in some cases, but I would argue that a lot of people start their motorcycling journey in their 20s when they're not so much growing up as they are out. I fit okay on the R3, and the Ninja 400 felt fine, but no matter what motorcycle I hop on, I always get that bear on a tricycle look. It sucks too, because at one point I was seriously considering buying an R3 to goof around with, but when I went and sat on one at the dealership, I had multiple people tell me that I looked funny on it completely out of the blue. Sure, I could have tuned him out, but motorcyclists are vain, and we care about the image we present to other people. Hell, even the Harley 500cc Cruiser, which makes the same 300 levels of power, is too small for me. Number 3 on the list of why 300cc bikes suck is power.
Oh, you don't say, huh? Well, gee, Spike, why doesn't everybody start on a liter bike then, huh?
Yes, obviously 300s are designed to be slow and manageable for beginners, but they're just not fun motorcycles to ride. When I first joined up with Yammie Noob, I remember talking to Papa Yams about the R3, and I asked him, when does the power come on? He turned to me and replied, it doesn't, and that's the best way to describe a 300. You can ring them all the way out to redline, and sure, you'll be going faster, but you'll never get a big shove or dynamic change in the power band. You basically just increase speed in a slow, linear fashion until it stops picking up speed. Compare that to the Ninja 400, which is slow at the low rev, but when you get it over 5,000 RPMs, you can really start to feel it pick up the pace, and the Svartpillen 401, which we're giving away for free over on YammieNoob.co, has a nice pokey low end that loves to pick the front wheel up. There's a playful quality to those bikes that's completely absent from the 300cc class, where the throttle is more of a suggestion than a command. Also, I don't want to completely undermine my stance on 300s on the highway, but there's really not much power left on tap when you get to freeway speeds. Sure, you'll be able to pass people, but you might need to be a little patient. Number 2 on today's list is that 300cc bikes just aren't meant to be your forever bike. There's a transient or impermanent quality to them, if you don't mind me stretching my vocabulary. The 300cc class is very utilitarian. You're meant to pick one up on Craigslist used for $3,000 and use it as a tool to learn how to ride a motorcycle, then flip it for $2,500 a year later if you're lucky. If you take a look at some of the title histories of these bikes, I'd wager you'd see upwards of 5 owners on one particular bike, and And that's because they're meant to only be your first step. It's why the Big Four haven't updated their 300s in years. It's why there's no technology in them, and it's why most people kinda think they're a little dorky and lame. The R3, for example, is a gateway into motorcycling. It's meant to convert a would-be rider into a lifetime Yamaha fanboy who'll buy R1s or MT-07s until the day they die. But you're not meant to stay on that R3. Sure, some folks keep their 300s around as toys or convert them into track mules like Yammie did, but they're still not your forever bike. And now, bearing all these points in mind, number one on today's list is that 300s are just too dang expensive. We here at Yammie Noob always recommend that you buy used for your first motorcycle, but there's definitely people out there who want to get into motorcycling and drop a cool $5,300 on a showroom shiny R3, probably damn near 6Gs out the door to get what is essentially just a motor and two wheels. The MT-03 is essentially the same motorcycle for $1,000 less, but even that's too much for what you're getting. I know these companies need to turn a profit, but the R3 needs to be around $4,500 and the MT-03 needs to be $4,000. Why? Because the Duke 390, which is a bike you're actually going to keep, can be had for $5,500. If Japan actually wants to compete in this market without updating their bikes, they really need to drop the price. That, or actually get off their lazy asses and make a motorcycle worth buying. In the meantime, you should probably just buy used.
Now how you doing, partner? This video's over, but you click on this one right over here. You keep watching yourself some Yammie Noob. Maybe I bend my Busa on this one. Maybe I'll give you some other funny memes or something like that. You might not know if you watch the video, so watch the video now, all right?